The Galactic High Command's war room was a cathedral of metal and arrogance. Holograms danced in midair, spinning, sprawling spheres, projections of surveyed worlds marked with coordinates, temperature indexes, and threat ratings. One particular planet flickered on the main display, Terra 3, or as its primitives called it, Earth. General Vrax lounged on the command dais, for arms draped over the sides of his seat like a predator basking in the sun. His chitinous armor gleamed in the artificial light, patterned with honors from 50 conquests. Around him, lesser officers buzzed with anticipation. Their latest operation had stalled in the Delcara Nebula, but this was to be a palate cleanser. A simple sweep and subjugate. Is this it? Vrax scoffed, pointing to the spinning green and blue orb on the display. The Council deemed this backwater worth a deployment. It's little more than a moisture-slicked wilderness. A diplomatic analyst, a frail avity with milky skin and mechanical eyes, adjusted her data pad. Earth's atmosphere is uniquely harsh. Its dominant species are biologically resilient and psychologically unstable. Terrain includes hyperdense jungles, arid deserts, and volatile oceans, atypical for primitive civilizations. Vrax let out a noise halfway between a laugh and a snarl. I've bathed in volcanic glass, swallowed worms on Zakhar Prime. You think I fear jungle? Of course not, General. But deploy the 7th Legion. I want orbital descent within 12 cycles. Begin extraction protocols immediately. We'll break the primitives and harvest whatever minerals they've buried in the mud. No one questioned him. The Varkari Empire hadn't lost a campaign in generations. And Earth, to them, was nothing more than an unclaimed orchard. Wild, ripe, and ignorant. The ships arrived in waves. Massive, dark crescents that eclipsed the sun, descending over the Amazon basin with the quiet arrogance of gods. Birds scattered. The undergrowth hissed with fleeing reptiles. Monkeys screamed warnings to no one in particular. The jungle, old and watching, bristled. Inside the main drop vessel, Commander Threx adjusted his exovisor, sneering at the thick humidity curling through the cracks in the hull. "This place stinks," he muttered, "like rot and old blood." A soldier behind him laughed. "You expect flowers from dirt monkeys? Just keep your eyes sharp. Reports say their military still uses combustion projectiles, primitive fire sticks." The entire company laughed. Their armor pulsed with heat regulation systems. Their rifles could melt titanium at 20 paces. Against spears and bullets, it was laughable. They landed in clearing Zeta 7, an unnatural scar hacked into the rainforest days before by orbital cutters. Trees lay like broken bones, the air thick with smoke and sap. Initial deployment was textbook. Drones swept the perimeter. Sensor pylons stabbed into the ground, mapping terrain. Tents and supply crates unfolded like origami from compressed canisters. But within hours, systems began to fail. The drones jittered. Some dropped mid-flight, spiraling into the canopy. Comms distorted with static and strange, guttural noises. Environmental readings fluctuated wildly. One pylon even exploded, its power cell ruptured by internal overload. They blamed moisture, or ionized tree pollen, or interference from Earth's unrefined magnetosphere. No one dared say it felt like sabotage. On the second day, the first patrol disappeared. 5 soldiers, all armed, all equipped with locator beacons, vanished. Threx activated a deep scan grid. Nothing. No heat signatures. No human chatter. Just jungle, hot, wet, and alive. On the third day, the second patrol returned. 2 of them, anyway, barely conscious. One was missing both arms. The other, wide-eyed, muttered in broken Varkari. They were watching. From the trees. From the mud. Eyes everywhere. The recovered gear was worse. Pieces of armor had been stripped and tied together with vines. One helmet had a crude drawing etched into it. 5 stick figures standing over a fallen alien, rifles in hand. Underneath, scratched in human English, "Still think we're primitive?" The message was clear. Threx submitted an emergency threat elevation to Vrax's command ship. It was ignored. The general had moved on to other matters, preparing a second wave for the next continent. I will not be delayed by a few tree crawlers and their tantrums. Proceed as planned. Threx's face twisted as he reviewed the footage again. Shadows darted across thermal screens. Human heat signatures flickered for seconds, then vanished. The jungle didn't just hide them, it absorbed them. Still, orders were orders. He sent out another patrol, this time doubled in size and escorted by 2 skimmers. Only one skimmer returned, piloted remotely. Its crew was gone. Inside, splattered across the cabin walls, were long smears of dark green alien blood and a boot. Human-made, worn, marked on the sole in faded paint. U.S. Jungle Special Forces. Threx stared at the boot for a long time. It wasn't just their weapons. It wasn't even their terrain mastery. It was the message. We know who you are. We're not afraid. That night, the jungle came closer. It pressed against the perimeter fencing. Sensor lights blinked and died. Motion detectors tripped randomly. The soldiers stopped laughing. They began to speak in whispers. Some swore they saw figures standing in the trees, watching silently before vanishing again. When morning came, one of the supply tents was empty. No signs of struggle, just a note scrawled on the fabric with what looked like blood. "You brought the war here. We'll finish it for you." Vrax finally responded, but only to insult Threx. "You've let superstition infect your command. Burn the forest if you must. Eradicate this infestation." The Valkyrie did try fire. They launched napalm pods into the undergrowth. Trees cracked. Smoke curled into the sky. The heat was immense. But when the smoke cleared, the jungle stood, different, rearranged, but undeterred. Paths changed. Terrain twisted, like the forest had memory and vengeance. And then silence. No more attacks. No more notes. No more signs. For 2 days, the camp existed in a strange, taut quiet. Threx didn't trust it. He doubled night patrols, reinforced every sensor array, kept his troops awake on stimulant cycles. Still, the silence weighed on them, crawling into their thoughts. Soldiers started hallucinating, hearing laughter in the brush, seeing movement in the flames. And when they slept, they dreamed of leaves. Always the leaves. On the morning of the 6th day, Threx awoke to screaming. The western perimeter was breached. Half the watch was dead, quietly, cleanly. No alarms had sounded. The main supply cache was missing. The power cores? Gone. Carved into the dirt with a combat knife was a message, written in sharp English. "You're not hunting us. We're hunting you." Threx didn't hesitate. He authorized immediate withdrawal and scrambled for extraction coordinates. But the extraction ships never arrived. No signal, no confirmation, just static and the rhythmic rustling of jungle leaves. It was no longer a mission. It was a massacre waiting to happen. The jungle listened. High in the canopy, beneath a curtain of leaves thick enough to smother moonlight, Captain Elias Reyes watched the Valkyrie camp through a slit in the undergrowth. His face was painted in streaks of mud and charcoal, indistinguishable from the vines around him. A fly landed on his cheek and died there, swallowed into the silence he wore like a second skin. He touched his comms earpiece. Movement confirmed. South perimeter. They're down to half strength. A whisper crackled back. "Copy. Orders." Reyes squinted through the monocular. The alien patrol was struggling, breathing hard in the humidity, their boots dragging through the damp earth like dead weight. One of them paused, glancing over his shoulder. He felt it. Not a sound, not a shape, just pressure. Reyes smiled. Fear was better than bullets. Let them go. We're not ready to finish this yet. He melted back into the foliage, vanishing without a trace. A kilometer west, First Sergeant Nia Ibarra crouched in a thicket of bamboo, her rifle angled downward, finger resting against the trigger guard. She didn't need to aim. Not yet. She watched the alien skimmer drift overhead, its low hum vibrating through the soil. Their search patterns were getting more frantic, sweeping too fast, too erratically. Desperation always revealed cracks. When the skimmer passed, Ibarra touched her locket, a tiny steel oval hanging from her neck. Inside, the picture of her son had long since faded, soaked too many times in sweat and rain. Still, it grounded her, reminded her why she was here, why they all were. Earth didn't start this war, but it would finish it in the dirt. Reyes's team wasn't large, just 8 operatives, pulled from nations that didn't even like each other before the invasion. Now they were family, hardened by fire, trained for one purpose: survive and dominate in hostile terrain. The jungle special forces weren't just elite, they were elemental, trained to move with the wind, strike with the silence of a falling leaf, disappear before the echo. And the jungle was theirs. Each member had been raised in wilderness, had lived through natural hellscapes before they ever picked up a rifle. Reyes had tracked jaguars in the Darien Gap as a teenager. Ibarra once survived a monsoon week with nothing but a machete and a hollowed-out tree. Corporal Anoi, their demolitions expert, grew up in a rainforest village where landslides were more common than rainfall. Every breath they took in this place was a homecoming. To the Valkyrie, the jungle was a problem. To Reyes and his unit, it was a partner. They didn't strike that night. Not directly. Instead, Reyes ordered a sound loop to be played from hacked Valkyrie transmitters. Low whispers, broken syllables in alien tongues, repeated every 17 minutes. Enough to be noticed, not enough to be explained. Then came the flashes of light in the trees. The decoy heat signatures. Small movements. Shapes. Paranoia was a weapon sharper than steel. The aliens began sleeping in shifts, then not sleeping at all. Some removed their helmets despite the humidity, just to feel air that didn't smell like plastic and fear. It only made them more vulnerable. The real assault began on the 7th night. At exactly 0200 hours, Reyes gave the go. The team split into pairs, each one assigned to a tent cluster or equipment node. No gunfire, no alarms, just knives, garrotes, and sabotage. An OI approached the comms array from below, crawling through muck that reached his chest. He emerged underneath the main panel, slid a shaped charge into the joint between 2 power couplings, and pressed the activation rune with a gloved finger. He was gone before the device blinked once. 30 seconds later, the array lit up in a spray of sparks, throwing power lines into disarray. Panel shut down. Holograms blinked and died. The entire camp went dark. At that moment, Ibarra struck. She took out 3 sentries in under 20 seconds, her blade a whisper, her steps lighter than rainfall. The 4th turned just in time to see her eyes, just eyes, and then nothing else. Reyes moved like a ghost through the officer's sector. He placed a high-pitched sonic emitter inside the command tent and retreated before it activated. The sound was inaudible to humans, but to Valkyrie ears, it was agony. Screaming pain. Untraceable. When the soldiers poured from their bunks, firing wildly into the dark, the humans were already gone. All that remained were the bodies. And messages. Tied to one was a torn Valkyrie standard, its colors blackened with ash, scrawled in English and their own language beneath it. Your tech doesn't scare us. The trees will eat your bones. The next morning, Valkyrie Command tried to regroup. Threx screamed orders into dead calms. His officers refused to patrol without full armor teams. Every sound became a threat, every breeze a warning. They tried drones again. The first was taken down by a vine-covered net. The second never returned. The third streamed for 17 minutes before someone hijacked its feed and rerouted it to every helmet in the sector. It showed Reyes's face. Unmasked. Calm. He said nothing. Just looked into the camera, then slowly dragged a finger across his throat. The stream ended. Reyes didn't smile as he watched the playback. This wasn't about bravado. It was about psychology. Warfare wasn't one with bullets. It was one with control. The Valkyrie had lost theirs. You know they're going to escalate, Ibarra said beside him, wiping her blade with a rag. Let them, Reyes replied. The more noise they make, the more mistakes they'll give us. They had learned long ago that firepower wasn't the answer. The jungle punished arrogance. What they needed was erosion, of confidence, of rhythm, of order. And it was working. By the end of the day, for more aliens had fled into the forest, hoping to reach extraction. None of them did. One was found curled in the roots of a strangler fig, muttering the same word again and again. Eyes. Two others were never found. Only their gear, folded neatly at the base of a tree with a single boot print nearby. The last one was left alive on purpose. Dazed, dehydrated, he stumbled back into camp with a human handprint painted on his chest in red clay. The Valkyrie medics scanned him for toxins. There were none, just fear. He was the one who spoke the legend first. They live in the trees, in the mud. They know our names. Back in the observation blind, Reyes listened to the intercepted translation and leaned back against the trunk of a massive ceiba tree. It's starting, he said softly. Ibarra nodded, glancing at the sun as it began to slip beneath the canopy. Sooner or later, she said, they're going to beg for an exit. Reyes's gaze hardened, and we'll be waiting. The jungle shifted around them, restless and alive. It wasn't just camouflage anymore. It was a battlefield with a heartbeat. Rain fell in sheets, pounding the canopy with a force that masked movement and stole sound. Water sluiced through the leaves and dripped in heavy pulses to the jungle floor. It was the kind of storm that bent time, that eroded memory, but the humans moved through it with ease, as if their bodies had been built in the storm's image. Captain Reyes knelt beneath a web of ferns, watching the Valkyrie camp through night optics. The aliens had dug in, but their fortifications were born of desperation, not discipline. Logs stacked at awkward angles. Motion detectors too close to each other, overlapping fields of detection. Panicked construction meant shortcuts, and shortcuts meant vulnerabilities. He keyed his mic with a soft click. Grid Omega 9. Weak corner. Repeat. Omega 9. Confirm. Sergeant Ibarra's voice came through seconds later. Confirmed. They've pulled 3 squads to reinforce northern approach. They're thinning south perimeter to cover noise. Noise, in this case, was Corporal and OI, who had triggered a remote charge against a ridge a half-click north of the camp. It was pure misdirection. The boom echoed like distant thunder through the jungle, sending alien squads scrambling in the wrong direction. Reyes gave a slow nod to no one. Move in. Standard pattern. No traces. They didn't speak again. Voices, even over encrypted channels, were a liability. What followed was a silent ballet of movement through vines and roots, wet branches and black soil. The Valkyrie had superior technology, but they were blind. Their helmets fogged in the humidity. Their internal mapping systems were never designed for terrain that shifted hourly, that grew over footprints and swallowed cables. Their species came from sterile stone plains and sky cities, where every element could be measured, quantified, controlled. Here, there was nothing but pulse and instinct. Inside the camp, panic had become culture. General Vrax had descended from his command ship 3 days earlier, fuming, determined to break this siege personally. He brought a battalion of shock troops, clad in heavy exosuits and armed with plasma carbines. He hadn't anticipated the psychological war. Every alien he passed looked over his shoulder. None met his eye. Whispers skittered through the ranks. Some had stopped sleeping. Others started marking their armor with strange symbols, wards, charms, defenses from something that could not be named. Vrax stood at the center of the operations tent, surrounded by a flickering holographic map. It displayed heat signatures in clumps, always shifting, always disappearing just before contact. "What are they?" he demanded, fist clenching. "They call themselves Jungle Special Forces," Threx replied, voice raw. "They're ghosts, sir. They're not fighting for ground. They're fighting for our minds. Then break them. We've tried. Firebombing, sensor drones, environmental disruptors. We even sprayed nerve agents over a 2-mile radius. And they weren't there." Vrax turned slowly, glaring down at his subordinate. "Then find where they are." But they had already found him. Reyes watched Vrax's arrival from a perch high above the camp, limbs wrapped around a branch like a panther. The general's presence changed the air. It wasn't authority. It was desperation masquerading as command. Reyes had seen that kind of fear before in failed states and broken regimes. He marked the new troop patterns, the altered patrol routes, the overcompensations. A command tent always became a target when fear ruled it. Tonight would be no different. At midnight, the rain stopped, and the jungle grew louder. Frogs sang. Insects clicked. The ambient hum of life returned like an orchestra tuning for violence. Reyes signaled the approach with 2 soft taps against his rifle. Anoa and Ibarra moved first, creeping along a sunken gully to avoid sensors. The ground there was soft, swallowing footsteps whole. They reached the generator bank in under 6 minutes. Anoa peeled back the casing of the main power coil with the skill of a surgeon. Ibarra kept watch, her rifle steady. The charge was placed. 15-second delay. Enough time. Reyes waited until the precise moment the lights died. Then he dropped from the canopy like a thunderclap. Landing beside the southern wall, he slit the throat of a sentry with one smooth pull of his blade. No time for drama. Just clean death. Another turn, another breath, another alien gone. He moved with purpose, precise and unforgiving, until he reached the tent. Inside, Vrax barked orders to flickering screens. He didn't notice Reyes until the flap opened and silence entered with him. The general turned, eyes narrowing. "You." Reyes said nothing. He raised his rifle and shot the table instead of the man, shattering the projection unit. Sparks flew. Vrax reached for his weapon. He never got there. Reyes tackled him backward, driving the alien into a support beam. The two struggled, strength against precision. Vrax's exosuit gave him an edge in power, but Reyes moved like water. He redirected strikes, twisted at angles that defied training. Then he whispered, "Welcome to Earth," and plunged his knife beneath the carapace seam in the alien's side. Vrax gasped, the light in his multiple eyes dimming. He slid to the floor, clutching at a wound he didn't understand. Reyes stepped back and faded into the dark, just as an OI triggered the fallback charge. A fireball erupted behind him as the camp exploded into chaos. Aliens screamed. Half their systems were down. The southern wall buckled. Tents flared. Fuel reserves lit up like sunrise. Reyes regrouped with Ibarra and Anoa at the extraction ridge. "Casualties?" he asked, voice even. "None," Ibarra said. "We're ghosts, remember?" From below, panic spread like oil through the camp. Threx had assumed command, his voice screeching through loudspeakers. Fall back to extraction zone Delta. Prepare all remaining ships for immediate lift. The transmission cut out. Reyes had jammed their frequency. They wouldn't leave. Not yet. Above them, storm clouds gathered again, as if summoned by the jungle itself. Thunder grumbled low in the earth. They watched for a few minutes in silence, letting the enemy's fear compound. Then Ibarra chuckled softly. Think they get it yet? Reyes exhaled. They will. By the time we're done, the whole galaxy will. Because Earth wasn't just a target. It was a warning. By the time the sun crested the horizon, golden light piercing through the misty canopy, the jungle no longer whispered. It spoke with the voice of blood and broken steel. The remains of the Valkyrie camp smoldered in ruin, columns of oily smoke rising above shattered equipment and torn banners. Half of their forces were dead. The rest were scattered, leaderless, afraid to even breathe too loud. They had come with machines and protocol, sensors and strategy. What they found was something primal, something older than war. Captain Reyes crouched at the edge of a cliff, overlooking the remnants of the battlefield. His hands were still dirty from the last engagement, mud caked into the creases of his knuckles, blood dried into the seams of his gloves. But his breathing was steady, measured. Around him, the jungle moved slowly, reverently, as if aware of the quiet victory in its leaves. Behind him, Ibarra approached without a sound, her boots soft on the moss-covered rock. Threx is cornered, she said. Retreat order went out, but the signal never left the atmosphere. No transports responded. They're isolated, Reyes replied, voice low. That means they're finished. They just haven't admitted it yet. Ibarra looked at him, eyes dark beneath the streaks of ash and paint. So we're done. Reyes didn't answer right away. Instead, he picked up a leaf, turned it in his fingers. The veins looked like rivers. Or cracks. No, not until they know why this happened. He stood, nodding toward the south where the last of the Valkyrie had regrouped near a fallen satellite beacon. The area had once been dense with trees, but they'd razed it in a desperate attempt to establish a safe zone. The clearing now looked like a wound, raw and unnatural. They think this is just tactics, Reyes said, that we're outplaying them. They don't get it. Ibarra crossed her arms. Then let's make sure they do. They moved like shadow again, slipping through the broken branches and wrecked underbrush, looping wide around the perimeter. Two other members of the unit, Anoai and Saito, were already in position, crouched behind the husk of an overturned recon skimmer. Saito was younger, faster, but his eyes were old. He had seen villages drowned by mudslides, cities fall to orbital fire. He didn't talk much, not because of trauma, but because he knew words were often less efficient than silence. Reyes gave the signal. 4 fingers, 1 movement. They swept in from the treeline, not to kill this time, but to surround, to compress. The Valkyrie cluster saw them too late. The humans were already inside their kill box. Panic erupted, as expected. Several opened fire wildly, plasma bolts tearing into empty foliage. One tried to scream orders, only for a sonic disruptor to overload his hearing canal. In 30 seconds, Reyes and his team had disarmed 4. Left them alive. Let them see. In the center of the chaos stood Threx, armor smeared with grime, his left arm dragging from a previous wound. His once commanding stature was hunched now, like a monument chipped hollow by time. He turned to face Reyes, nostrils flaring. You fight without honor, Threx growled in English, thick with accent. Like predators. You ambush. You deceive. Reyes took one slow step forward. We fight to win, he said calmly. And we fight for home. You came to this world thinking it would be easy. that your ships and numbers would make you gods. But you never understood what you walked into. He pointed upward. This place, it's alive. It watches. And we're part of it. You burned trees thinking they were obstacles. You poisoned rivers thinking they'd flow the same. But Earth isn't just terrain. Reyes took another step, eyes locked on Threx's. It remembers. Threx raised his chin. You think your victory here changes the outcome of this war? The Varkari Empire spans 1,000 systems. You are ants biting the heel of a titan. Ibarra stepped forward now, her voice sharp and quiet. Then let this be the bite that teaches titans to fear ants. Silence hung for a long moment. Only the jungle moved. Then Reyes reached into his pack and withdrew a data core, Varkari issue, but clearly tampered with. He tossed it at Threx's feet. Go ahead, he said. Review it. We let one of your scouts live. He ran for 3 days. You'll see where he ended up. What he recorded before the jungle took him. Threx bent, retrieved the core slowly, as if unsure whether it would explode. His hands shook as he inserted it into his gauntlet's reader. A flickering projection appeared. A Varkari scout, eyes wide, speaking rapidly. The footage showed him lost, circling, hallucinating shapes in the mist. Then screams, not from outside, from inside his helmet. System glitches, malfunctions, the jungle breathing. The feed ended with a single frame. Human eyes staring into the camera, painted in mud, surrounded by shadows that moved when the trees did not. Threx backed away, shoulders heaving. You've weaponized the planet itself. Reyes shook his head. No, we just listened to it. Saito stepped forward now, crouched beside a fallen alien weapon and crushed it under his boot. You should go, he said, before the jungle decides it doesn't want you here anymore. Threx stared at them for a long time, then at his remaining soldiers, exhausted, broken. Whatever pride, he still clung to fractured visibly. He issued no command. He simply turned and walked. One by one, the others followed. No formation, no salute, just surrender in motion. As the aliens disappeared into the fog, Reyes looked to his team. They had all survived, some with new scars, all with more silence behind their eyes. But they were alive, and Earth for now was still theirs. Back at their camp, hidden in the roots of an ancient kapok tree, Reyes sat beside the fire. Ibarra passed him a cup of boiled water, nodding once. He looked around at the others, their gear spread out to dry, their weapons cleaned by practiced hands. They'll tell stories about this, Saito said softly. Good, I know, I replied. Let them. Reyes leaned back against the tree, staring into the branches overhead. The galaxy doesn't understand wilderness, he murmured. Not really. They see untamed land. We see sanctuary. They came here to conquer, Ibarra said. Instead, they got reminded. Saito smiled faintly. Of what? Reyes met his gaze. That the jungle doesn't care who you are, only if you belong. And with that, the fire cracked, the leaves stirred, and somewhere in the distance, the wind carried away the last echo of alien boots retreating into the wild.